welcome to this 100th episode of the Even Better podcast. Can you imagine 100 episodes? What an experience this has been. Thank you so much for joining me along the way. Thank you for tuning in and downloading or listening along your journey. I'm so grateful to have been on this journey with you. This is part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us all have better work days, even better work days, so that together we can co-create better communities. And my name is Sinikka Waugh. And this particular day, this particular episode, I thought it might be fun to spend a little time perusing or reminiscing or meandering through some of the 10 things that I've learned in the years that I've been running this business. And as we're coming up on the end of 16 years in business, that is really hard to imagine, but there we are. So 16 years in business. Wow, things that I've learned in this journey. So 10 things that I've learned, and they're not really in any particular order. And I won't try to bore you in these. It's sort of a top 10 list, but they're not in any particular order. And they will serve as fodder for future episodes as we go forward. But 10 things I've learned, 10 things maybe I'd tell my younger self or my business starter self or a self who was going to have a better workday. And as I think about this, I was trying to think about why this would matter, right? And I teach entrepreneurship at Central College, and I was thinking, well, is this the entrepreneurial angle, right? Is this going to be from the perspective of the entrepreneurial mindset? And maybe a little bit, but not really, because I'm not expecting or imagining that all of the listeners out there are set on building their own businesses, because that is not for the weak at heart, my friends. I'm not sure I would counsel my best friends to start this, and I'm not sure that I would encourage us to all go and start our own businesses. I I wouldn't change a bit of the story. I wouldn't change a moment, because you can't tell the story of Your Clear Next Step without talking about the way the hand of God has blessed me in so many ways, and I am so grateful. And I wouldn't change my story, but I'm not sure I'd counsel it for everybody. So no, it's not an entrepreneurial story, although we can be entrepreneurial within other organizations. It doesn't mean we have to go start our own businesses. And is it the perspective of a woman at work, a woman in the workplace? Well, no, not all our listeners are women. Certainly, I can tell you a woman's experience, but my experience isn't like every other woman's experience, and not all of us out there are women. So no, it's not a woman's experience or the experience that every woman should have, nor is it unique to all women or every woman or just women. So no, it's not that. Well, is it just for IT professionals or business analysts or project managers? Well, sure, I can tell a story of IT professionals and business analysts and project managers because I've had those experiences, but my experiences are from a particular point in time, from a particular place, and from a particular point in my journey. So it's not going to be unique to it's not going to be universal, but it has some truth to it. So I'll share part of that. Is it corporate? Sure. Some of my stories are from corporate and some of them are from smaller businesses. So I hope that as you listen to these stories, I hope that what you'll get out of them would be things that would resonate with you in various places, men and women, young. As I started this business 16 years ago, I have to believe I was younger then than I feel today. But as I share these stories, they're seasoned with things that those of us who've been around for a little bit longer can share with others and can relate to. So younger, maybe not so young, women and not women, in corporate or small business, as I'm a parent, but maybe you're not a parent, and that's okay. I would hope that you'll find nuggets and things in these top 10 things that I've learned while running this business that might resonate with you. And I hope that you'll find them useful. So here we go, a couple of things that I would share. So one of the first things that has been really crazy hard for me, but I would say that by now I've finally learned it, especially if you've spent any time with the disc profiles or you spend any time with me as a person, you probably understand that in my high I-ness, the things that I desire, I just want everyone to like me, right? I just want to be loved. And isn't that the cry of so many of our hearts, is to be loved and to be appreciated and to be valued for who we are. And I think one of these big lessons that I've learned in running these business that I would share with you is that some people won't like you. Sit with that for a second. Some people won't like you, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be in your tribe, but your tribe loves you, and they love you when you are authentically you. And I would say, even when you're authentically you, and maybe even especially when you're authentically you. Brene Brown has wonderful teachings for us about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And her message there is not to spend so much time trying to fit in, trying to fix ourselves so that we fit into a space, but to know that when we have true belonging, we already belong to a space because we are able to show up there as our authentic selves. And I think I spent a lot of time in the early part of my business trying to fit into spaces that weren't the ones to which I really belonged. And I think I always felt a little off kilter and a little off center and a little not quite my true self and not able to shine the way I wanted to shine or the way I knew I was created to shine. And so this is the first and maybe the most powerful lesson here is that some people won't like you, and that's okay. It's okay that some people don't like you. Not everyone is meant to be in your tribe. It doesn't mean we're not kind to them. It doesn't mean we're not respectful to them. It doesn't mean we're not caring to them. It doesn't mean we're not generous and supportive of them. It just means we don't let it break our hearts. And when we find our tribe, and we know that we've recognized our tribe is so easy to spot because they let us be authentically us, and they celebrate us when we are authentically ourselves. So go find your tribe, my friends. Go find your tribe. They are the ones who recognize you and celebrate you and love you when you are authentically you. So that's going to bring us to our second key point here, which is around the truth that you have permission to take up your space. And I'm going to caveat this a little bit. You have permission to take up your space. And this is, I need you to hear this in a couple of different ways. And I needed to hear this in a couple of different ways. And maybe our listeners need to hear this in a couple of different ways. We have permission to take up all and only our own space. So some people barrel through lives taking up more than their own space. And we need to be aware of the people around us so that we're not taking up more than our own space. But some of us go through lives taking up less than our own space. And I think it goes back to that first idea of trying to fit in and squeezing ourselves into smaller boxes and smaller shapes so that we don't disturb the people around us, or so that we don't disrupt or somehow um, distress the people around us with our mere existence. And I think that's a case of not being our authentic selves. When I've gone through this business and I've allowed myself to take up my authentic space, my space, not someone else's space, I do not have permission. And if you're listening to me right now, and you have a habit of taking up someone else's space and your voice carries over into someone else's voice, and so they themselves don't get to be heard, that's not okay. You don't have permission to overwrite someone else's voice, but you have permission to take up your space. Your space is your space. You have permission to take up your space. Take up your space. Let your voice be heard. You have a voice. You have a contribution to this world. You are valuable. You were divinely created for a purpose. And when we step into that purpose, and when we fill up the space that we were divinely created to fill, wonderful and amazing things happen, and people are drawn to that light. And sometimes that's when our tribe grows the best. It's really been beautiful over the years watching people and connecting with people and watching them as a leader, being able to connect with them and watch them sort of come out of their shells, if you will. And as a volunteer in the volunteer spaces that I've served, connecting with people and inspiring them and lighting up and seeing, as I think about one of the folks who's now serving in a leadership role in a volunteer capacity. She's stepped into leadership, and watching her grow in her own career from someone who sort of stood on the sidelines and then started to just take up her own space and step into that light. And it's so beautiful to watch, where when she learned that she did not have to stand on the sidelines and her voice mattered. It's so beautiful. You have permission to take up your space, and you have permission to take up all and only your own space. You don't have permission to step on someone else. You don't have permission to drown out someone else's voice or to make your voice louder than others. You have permission to take up your space. Your voice matters, and so do the voices around you. Which brings us to the third lesson that I've learned in these years of growing this business. And I think I had heard about emotional intelligence before, right? It was something that I knew and something that I had studied, and certainly a space that I was in as I grew into this business, or I wouldn't have chosen it as a discipline that we teach. And it's something that I had experienced and loved in my study of literature. But emotional intelligence, so the ideas of being self-aware and managing myself and being aware of others and managing those relationships, I mean, that's been around for a long time. Daniel Goleman and his colleagues have been writing around about it for years and decades, frankly. So the whole concept here, I'd known about it. But the key lesson for me that has come really profoundly as I've grown this business is that the process really is linear. It really is linear. And when you get to the end of the process of self-aware, self-manage, other-aware, relationship manage, then you get to the end and you're not at the end. You do it all over again. We never arrive at emotional intelligence. We never arrive and this is it. I'm as emotionally intelligent as I'll ever need to be. We never get there. It really is linear. And when you arrive at the end of relationship management, you do it all over again. You see, relationship management is that space where I recognize how to manage me and how to get out of my own way, and all the things that I recognize about you and what you need in the moment that you're going through. And I move us both forward in the best possible way for the best possible outcome. And I can't do that. That's relationship management. That's the fourth stage. I can't do that unless I'm aware of who you are and the moment that you're in and the dynamics of this situation. And I do that part in other awareness or social awareness. And I can't do other or social awareness unless I've managed myself and I've gotten out of my own way. And I do that part in self-management. And I can't get out of my own way and self-manage unless I've acknowledged and I become self-aware of who I am, to acknowledge that I'm in my own way in the first place. And I do that in self-awareness. You see, it has to be linear. It has to be linear. I have to become self-aware, and then I have to manage myself, and then I have to recognize that you're here too. And isn't that great? And then I can manage our relationship. And it's linear, and we do it all over and over and over and over again. Emotional intelligence really is linear. And we keep doing it all over and over and over again, sometimes in moments, sometimes in hours, sometimes many times throughout the day. Over and over again. As we move through that process of emotional intelligence, we start to think about other things. And this one is going to sound a little strange, but it's going to move into this idea of self-care. And I've learned this definition of self-care. I learned it fairly recently from I love the way she puts it, Hannah Muller. We'll see lots more of Hannah Muller in the years to come. She and I just recorded a podcast recently. It was our second one, an episode, and we'll see more of her. I just am so inspired by what she's doing. But the idea of self-care, it's not self-indulgence. It's not going to the spa and taking care of myself and indulging in all the things that I've ever wanted. I love this definition that she has of self-care. It's really around adulting. It's about being the grown-up in the situation and about caring for yourself and taking care of yourself. Another colleague that I worked with for just some wonderful, wonderful time, she described self-care. She had this process. I think one of the times she told the story, she said, "Oh, I used to believe when I was a kid, I believe that coffee was the grown-up drink. When I was a kid, I thought that coffee was the grown-up drink." And then she said, "Oh, no, then I got to be an adult and I thought that alcohol was the grown-up drink." And she said, "And then I got old enough to drink alcohol and I realized that water is the grown-up drink." And this is the idea, right? This is it. This is self-care. This is adulting. This is the realization that self-care, caring for yourself, is not indulging yourself in the extra whatever it is. It's not pampering yourself. It's taking the care of yourself that you need so that you are healthy enough to care for those around you. It's so that you're healthy enough to do the work that you need to do what you do to survive. It's getting enough sleep at night. It's drinking enough water. It's getting the exercise that you're supposed to get. It's feeding your body proper nutrition. Self-care isn't indulgence, it's being a grown-up. What a wonderful definition. And I think I've learned this through my business is that self-care isn't about being indulgent and having a Sinikka day off. It's about having a Sinikka health day, where a Sinikka health day means going and taking care of the things that Sinikka needs for her health, whether it's my mental health, whether it's my physical health, whether it's the health of those around me. Self-care isn't indulgence, it's adulting. Another thing that I've learned is that speaking of self-care and self-awareness, so this topic is around building more forts and having more fun. So build more forts and have more fun is a lesson that I've learned in this business in the 16 years. Build more forts and have more fun. Do the things that bring you joy. Got a colleague right now who's written a book, Joy is My Job. And I delight in that. What a great title. Joy is my job. So build more forts and have more fun. And this is tying back to a lesson that I'd heard some number of years ago as a mom. It was a woman who was regretting as her kids were moving off to college. She was regretting that she hadn't built more forts. She'd spent too much time folding up the blankets in the living room, and she'd spent too much time putting things away and cleaning up, and not enough time playing in the forts and building the blanket forts in the living room. And I'm going to just adjust this a little bit. And I like the idea, build more forts and have more fun. But maybe forts aren't your thing. Maybe your joy isn't found in fort building. And that's okay too. I don't want to advocate that you build forts if fort building isn't your thing. But I'm going to advocate that you find your joy and carve off time for that. Find whatever it is that brings you joy. There are people out there who will say, go camping, go out into nature, play more games, read more books, find time for music. These are all excellent pursuits. Camping is great. Spending time in nature is great. Music is great. Reading is great. Baking is great. Doing acts of service for others is great. Volunteering is great. I love these things. Find your joy. Don't find my joy. Don't find someone else's joy. Find your joy and do that thing that brings you joy. If your joy is building life-size replicas of things out of Lego, then do that. If your joy is going to car shows, do that. If your joy is Dungeons and Dragons with your friends, play D&D with your friends. Find your joy. If your joy is golf, golf. If your joy is playing with your nieces and nephews, play with your nieces and nephews. Find your joy. But my friends, here's the thing. Here's what I know. Carve off time for that. Put it on your schedule. Make time for it. Don't let the time slip by. Don't let the time slip by. Make time for joy. Have more fun. Do those things that bring you joy, because it's so important. The joy when we're doing it It oozes out of us. We can't help it. When we're so excited about it, that's one of those things that will attract our tribe to us because our tribe also finds the joy in the things that we find joy in. If your joy is gardening, then garden. If your joy is snow skiing, then snow ski. Do what your joy is. It will attract your tribe. They will find you and they will find you having joy, being your authentic self, and they will love you. So we're on to the bottom half of these 10 things that I've learned since starting this business. And we're on to number 6. Number 6, caring for others isn't an act of sacrifice or altruism. So let's talk about caring for others. Many of us spend time giving and serving and getting out there, volunteering, putting others first. And I believe that looking out for others, putting others' needs first, holding the door open for others, leaving a better parking spot for others. When I go into a parking, so this is a thing that I do. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about the fact that she does it too. So we get to a space and get to a parking lot, and there are spots there, and even if it's not so I'm going to leave a spot next to I'm going to leave a prime spot. I'm going to take a subprime spot. So I'm going to leave the prime spot, which is the one right next to the corral, the cart corral at the grocery store. I'm going to leave the prime spot for someone who's got small kids or someone who's got a lot of groceries. If I'm not going to have a lot of groceries, I'm not going to take the prime spot. I'm going to leave that for someone who's got small kids. And because I've been there, right? I had small kids and I needed that prime spot right next to the cart corral where I could then put my cart in and load the kids and the cart right in the groceries and then put the cart right away and have it super easy. So I'm going to leave that spot for someone who needs it and I'm going to take a different spot. So looking out for others and their needs, that's not an act of sacrifice. It's not an act of altruism. And I'm going to park further away. Plus I need the extra steps. They're not going to hurt me at all. But doing things like that, it's not an act of not taking up my own space. It's not an act of doing something that's silly or in any way to be put down. It's an act of how we survive in this game of life. When I think about it, I think about the times that someone else would have left that spot open for me. And I was so grateful that as a new mom with a baby and a toddler, I had a spot that was right next to the cart corral, and I could load up my kids in my cart and load up my car and my groceries and then just put the cart away and not be that far from my kids. My gosh, it's so great to have that spot. So there's a life example, a business example, things that you can do when you let others have the final word, or ways that you can let others go first and let them speak first and then reflect on that, or ways that you can do things to lift others up or let them get the credit in a spot where it doesn't matter who gets the credit for this. There are things that we can do that are caring or looking out for others. I've heard of organizations that allow people to share PTO because we're looking out for others, and let organizations share that individuals can share their PTO for people who might need it because theirs ran out and they've got sick kids or bereavement leave that they need or other things in that circumstance. Looking out for others, man, that's not it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And my friends, it's an investment. Ultimately it's how we all survive in this game of life. Don't apologize for caring for others. Don't apologize for giving to others. Don't apologize for putting others first in your life. Just don't forget to sleep. So for those of you who are givers, those of you who are servers, those of you who live this act of service as part of your mindset, it's okay to put others first. It's okay. In fact, I would argue it's how we get through. It's how the game is played. It's how we survive because we're building this network around us. We're building this tribe of people who see that we care, and someday they're going to care back, and they're going to help us. And we don't do it so that they will. We do it because it's the right thing to do. We do it because it's how we show love. And we do it because it draws a light and a community around us of people who help each other. And it's the right thing to do. I would argue sometimes people will say, oh, you work too hard. Oh, you give too much. Oh, you sacrifice too much. To those people who hear that message and you wonder, I'm going to invite you to not think of it that way. I'm going to invite you to not think of it, oh, you give too much, oh, you sacrifice too much, oh, you serve too much. I'm just going to invite you to don't forget to sleep. Don't forget to rest. Don't forget to also take care of you. Back to that whole self-care thing. Don't forget to also take care of you, because if you work yourself to the bone, if you weary yourself so that there's nothing left of you, then there's nothing left to give, and you can't serve anymore, and you can't do the things that you were created to do. You can't find the joy in helping others because there's nothing left in you to draw from. So don't forget to sleep. Don't forget to rest. Don't forget to care for yourself. Caring for others is great. Putting others first is great. Loving others is great. Doing unto others the way you would want done to you, that's a wonderful way to live. Just don't forget to rest. Don't forget to sleep. Don't forget to adult. Don't forget to self-care. Uh, tied with that, it's not its own learning, but it's sort of a sub point on this, is someone once pointed out to me that people think of us less than we think they do. It's not that they think less of us, it's that they think of us less. So this sort of ties into this caring for others. It's not when we give to others and when we serve, it's not that we go around expecting them to return. It's that moment that we're doing it, we're not doing it for them. We're doing it because it's an act of service that we do. It's an act of service that we give of ourselves, and it brings us joy, but it can't keep bringing us joy if there's nothing left of us to give. So care for others, do it because it's the right thing to do. It's going to draw a tribe around you who also does that, and that's a great community to be a part of. But don't do it at the cost of your health. Don't forget to sleep. And this ties to number 7. So set boundaries before you need them. This would have been a really great lesson for me to have had in the earliest days of your clear next step. So I've said before, and I'll say it time and time again, I wouldn't go back. There's nothing that I would change in the history of this company. In the history of running this business, I cannot point to any story, any anecdote, any moment that doesn't also point to the hand of God in this story. He's been with me at every part of this journey, and it all goes back to my intentional commitment to let this company be an act of worship for him and an act of service, trying to live my life as an act of stewardship in the blessings that he's given me so freely. And yet, right, I wouldn't go back, I wouldn't change anything. And yet, in the earliest days, there were some moments where I was working back in the very early days of the business. There are some things that I'm not super proud of that were part of the story, and some of you have heard me share these parts of the story. But there were some days in there when my kids were super little, and I would get up in the morning, and I would get up at I would do a little bit of client work in the very, very early morning. And then I would take care of the kids from 6 to 8. So 6 to 8 would be get ready for the kids and do the kids, get them off to school, and start the kid part of the family day, dedicate 6 to 8 for the family, and then go do work from 8 to 4, and then 4 to 6 back at home doing family stuff. 4 to 6 the after school stuff, and get the kids ready for all the dinner and put dinner on the table and do that kind of stuff. And then 6 to 8 bedtime routine, get the kids into bed, do all that sort of thing. 8 to 10 spend some time with my husband, and then he would go to bed, and then I'd work from 10 to 12 doing client stuff and working on things. And then I'd sleep from sometimes 12 to 2. I would sleep a little bit, then I'd get up from 2 to 4, do some more client stuff, and then 4 to 6 I would do a little bit of getting ready for myself and have some quiet time and do that. And then 6 to 8 we'd be back at it again with the family stuff. So there's this really, really scheduled, regimented day that had very, very little sleep in it, and it wasn't good for my health. And I was burning the candle literally at both ends, trying to be the mom and the wife and the business owner and doing client work and doing trying to support running the business and doing the things that I needed to do for the business, and then supporting my clients and being there and present for them, and then doing the things that I thought I should do, but there just wasn't enough time for my health. And I watched my health decline in some pretty profound ways. And those who were closest to me watched it decline as well. And God knocked me upside the head a couple of times with some minor injuries that should have slowed me down and didn't. And then there were some sicknesses, and there was a moment I'll never forget this moment. I had just come off a retreat, a weekend facilitating a strategic planning retreat, and it was in Colorado. And the client had had this wonderful, wonderful retreat that they had had. But because I was facilitating the retreat, I had all the work that I had to do between sessions. So I was working the retreat. They were sleeping and retreating and playing and doing all their things, but I was facilitating. And so I had all the between session work and the prep and the facilitation work that I had to do. So it was not in any way restful for me. And then I was flying in and out. And then I had client stuff that I had to do with other clients back here at home in Iowa, and then get back from that late night, Sunday night, and Monday I'm back at work again. And I was going to facilitate a training for about 80 people on Monday afternoon. And Monday at lunch, I'm meeting with a friend of mine and we have lunch together. And I've lost my voice. I've got walking pneumonia at this point, and I'm having lunch with her and I'm talking like this. And it just wasn't a great moment. And she knows that I'm on my way to go train, and I have no business at all training a group of 80 people with a voice that sounded like that. I mean, my quality was just abysmal, but there was no one to fall back on. And I just had this relentless desire to continue to do what I was trying to do because I wanted to build this business. And she looked at me in this just look of care and concern. And she said, Sinikka, I'm really worried about you. And I looked back at her over lunch and I said, for the first time in my career, I'm worried about me too. And she said, so what are you going to do about it? And there's this wonderful story that I won't tell now, but I'll save for another day about what happened then. I said, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And this journey and this way that things unfolded from then, this willingness to get help and to be supported, that unfolded into just an amazing story of how hope was then available and support was available because I was willing to get help. But setting those boundaries before I needed them would have allowed for a healthier story, a healthier story that didn't involve burning the candle at both ends, a story that didn't involve hospitalizations, a story that didn't involve walking pneumonia, a story that didn't involve a dear and cherished friend looking across the table from me saying, you have got to do something about this. Set boundaries before you need them. Set boundaries before you need them so that in the moment, you can recognize that, oh, this is how low the bank account can get, or this is how stressed out I can get, or this is how tired I can get, or these are the walls of tolerance that I can handle, or this is how dark this situation can get, or this is the behavior that I'll tolerate or the behavior that I won't. Whatever it happens to be, set those boundaries before you need them so that when you go into the situation, you recognize, aha, we've bounced up against the boundaries. Now I'm walking. And I've got these beautiful success stories that I can tell of other things as a project manager, right? We talk about risk and we know what our risk triggers are. We know what this looks like when we do it well. And so we need to apply this in business, in life. When we unpack this one in a future episode, I'll share just amazing, beautiful stories of people who I know who have set boundaries before they needed them and how healthy that has been. So we'll tie this to number 8. Number 8 is on the flip side, excellence matters many, many times. Excellence matters is how to stand out. So wait, Sinikka, you just said that people think of us less than we think they do. Not that they think of Not to think less of us, but they think of us less often. Yes, they do, but they remember our excellence. They remember how we made them feel. They remember because we stand out for our excellence. There are many, many times when excellence does matter. And I have learned over and over and over again that the way that we continue to stand out is by being excellent, not by being half-hearted, not by being mediocre, not by being meh, but by being excellent. The way they remember us is because we took the time to write that handwritten note. The way they remember us is because we took the time to remember their name and their kid's name and their dog's name. The way they remember us is because we remembered to do the thing we were supposed to do well and excellently. We spelled their name correctly. We said their name correctly. We showed up when we were supposed to show up, and we did the thing we were supposed to do, and we did it well, all the way to the end, not just not just until we got our evaluation, but all the way to the end. We showed up and we showed up well. Excellence matters. It's how you stand out. We don't settle. We don't settle for meh or mediocre when we know we shouldn't. Excellence matters, and it continues to matter. And I stand by this. I believed it before and I continue to believe it. It's what makes us stand out. And if that's what attracts your tribe, and if that's what brings your tribe to you is your excellence, then that, my friends, is a great tribe to continue to have. Number 9, you move at your own pace. You move at your own pace, and that's okay. So some of us move a little faster, some of us move a little slower. Some of us move in whimsical turns and fits and starts, and we go a little that way and we go a little this way. Some of us move straight ahead. Some of us move straight ahead and then backwards a few steps, and that's okay. You move at your own pace, and that is okay. Here's the second part of that. Asking someone else to move at your pace, so as a leader, as a friend, as a colleague, asking someone else to move at your pace requires that you give them the tools, the skills, the training, the resources to do so. And even then, they may not be able to be you. You're unique. You're supposed to be unique. You were divinely created to be unique. So as I've unpacked this, I know for sure that I am wildly fast-paced. I move crazy fast, and I know this. And I spent a lot of my life believing that I am just like everybody else and that everyone else is just like me. It has taken me 16 years of running this business to understand that, in fact, I do think about some things and I do process some things and I do some things differently than other people. And I honestly didn't believe this. I genuinely didn't understand it. And it has been through running a business that I've finally come to grips with the fact that each one of us does things differently than the person next to us. And that's totally okay. And when you expect others to come along with you, and this is as a leader, as a friend, as a colleague, as a business partner, if you're asking your vendor partner to come along with you, if you're a volunteer and you're asking a committee to come along with you, you can ask them to come along with you, but you can't ask them to come along and be you. And if you're asking them to come along and keep pace with you, fast or slow, curvy or windy or straight and narrow or up the hill or down the hill, you can ask them, you can invite them, you can implore them, you can beg them. But if you don't equip them, that's just mean. You got to equip them with the tools and the resources to do what you want them to do. And the last one, this is something that I have learned. Number 10. So 10 things I've learned in the last 16 years of running this business. Number 10, you can fail at something and not be a failure. Now, some of you already knew this. Some of you picked this up in your teens or your 20s. Some of you learned this in your 30s, and it took me until my 40s. But you can fail at something and not be a failure. You can fail spectacularly at something and still not be a failure. A setback is only a failure if you don't learn from it. As a parent, as a business owner, as a leader, as a colleague, as a friend, the thing that I'm taking away from this lesson so profoundly is the encouragement to practice and to demonstrate continuous improvement, which I've always done, right? Continuous improvement has always been the spirit. And I've always demonstrated grace with others. I have always done this, right? Anybody who stands close to me has always known that we practice continuous improvement. We always move forward. We always treat each other with grace. We always say, okay, we can keep moving. What did we learn from that? We can keep going. We can keep going. And now I can also practice that same continuous improvement, that same willingness to learn from our mistakes and keep going. I can also demonstrate that with a little bit of grace for myself. And that, my friends, has been a pretty powerful lesson. So, what have you learned in the last 16 years? What have you learned in the life journeys that you've been a part of? I hope that some of these nuggets have been useful to you. Maybe they don't all apply, but maybe there's something that you've picked up. I would love to hear your story. We are working on an update to our Even Better podcast. We're shifting gears a little bit. We're going to get more conversational. I would love to engage with you. Will you join us in social media? Will you chat with me? Will you engage with me? Will you invite yourself to open up a little bit in conversation? Will you tell me what you want to hear more about? I am so excited about the new direction that we're going with the Even Better podcast as we start to explore what you want to talk about and what you want to hear more about as we move forward in the Even Better podcast and talk about the things that you're more interested in as we help you have even better days so that together we can co-create better communities. What's making you even better these days, and how can we help you get there? On behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, thank you so much for listening, and I hope the rest of your day is even better.